Welcome guys to another episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. Today we're going to be taking a look at some sea creature themed characters. This is the show where we spotlight MOCs from across the LEGO community to give you some ideas and inspiration for your own future builds. Now I know I promised that we would have a episode purely dedicated towards fan-submitted MOCs, and that will come, don't you worry. But as always seems to happen when I'm about to do the fan-submitted MOCs episode, someone drops a really cool collab and then I want to cover it. So that'll come out next week, I promise. But hey, it gives you some more time to submit your own stuff. So that's okay. So this collab is called Pittober. Essentially, more or less what it's doing is taking some inspiration from a sort of canon location from the Bionicle story called The Pit. The Pit was sort of like a jail of sorts used by the Order of Mother Nui to imprison those who were considered irredeemable. And it also had some effects of like mutating the creatures and prisoners and things that were underneath the water. So it allows for some cool creative possibilities. These are also seeming to be inspired by different kind of fossils or other extinct animals. So I'll touch upon with each MOC what it was based off of with pictures and things. So yeah, it's a good idea to get some inspiration for, that's for sure. Let's dive into the first MOC. It's by Student Scissors, and this is Helicoprion. So this is inspired by, I'm not even going to try and pronounce some of the names of these ones. This one's a little bit easier. Is it easier? Helicoprion? Look, I can't even pronounce simple Bionicle names sometimes. Imagine how I'm going to do with some of these extinct creatures. Regardless, this thing looks pretty cool, like a weird shark with like some kind of, I don't know, weird like razor blade looking face thing of sorts. And I love seeing how that's been translated here on this character by just straight up putting one of the, translucent kind of shield buzzsaw pieces that came on one of the protector sets. But yeah, I love that idea. It's not quite fully accurate to the source material because, of course, prehistoric creatures didn't have an actual buzzsaw on their faces. But I think it's a lovely way of translating it into Bionicle, and it kind of just works, kind of just makes sense. So it's a really fun idea and a unique way to build a face design there. Speaking of the face, I love how he's done the eye design here. This is using a relatively new-ish piece that comes on the Mysterio minifigure. It comes in a couple different colors, but this is that sort of like almost like satin blue color here, or sort of trans satin blue. I don't know its exact name, but it is a more unique color. And yeah, it's cool to see how well that pops and how nicely it is paired with some of the other sort of translucent elements used on this MOC. So a very unique face and eye design there. I also enjoy seeing how he's used some of these different Strack pieces from, of course, the Glotorian Bionicle set Strack. We can see those being used on like the hands and the legs here with the mask and the sort of like ice piece. And now I guess, it looks like sort of icy textures, but I also kind of saw it as sort of kind of parts of like mutation of sorts, which kind of fits with the theme of this collab, but also the idea of I don't know, it could even just be sort of like bioluminescence or weird, interesting, like sharp scales of sorts. I don't know. I think it's interesting to see them partner with some of these other pieces, and it starts to take on a bit more of a life of its own. It's not necessarily ice on this MOC here. So a very creative way of using those pieces, and very much using them out of the original context that the pieces were sort of designed for, but yet it still works really well. So yeah, fantastic MOC here with some lovely little part usages and some very clever techniques and nice ways of adapting the source material. On to the next MOC now. This is by Roses Must Build, and this is why are these so hard to pronounce? Not a lack. So this is based off of this creature here. You can very easily see the sort of distinction here. And I love the fact that he's just added some like robot tentacles and a big old firing gun. I mean, if you give somebody cybernetic limbs and give them a big old firing gun, I think 9 times out of 10 it's going to look a lot cooler. So that's a very fun addition here. I also like the fact that they're using some of the like power effect pieces that come in a lot of different Marvel sets and a few other things here and there. Those are really cool pieces, and like they come in a different, a variety of different colors as well. So it's nice to see them used here to kind of bring this to life, make it look like it's actually firing, its weapons there and stuff. That's very, very cool to see. I also love the eye design on this MOC here, using some of these sort of like bowl pieces of sorts. They've appeared in a few different things. I remember the first time I saw them was on the Simpsons house Lego set, and they were used as a way to kind of connect the roof onto the building. And yeah, so there's that piece there. I think it's even been used as like a toilet bowl piece, so it has many uses. And then partnering it with some sort of studs with holes through, well, maybe it's not a stud, maybe it's one of the cylinder pieces. There's some sort of round cylindrical sort of brick or plate of sorts. And then putting a lightsaber rod through the middle to give it that pupil, putting the Lord of the Rings ring around it as well, so it really starts to look a lot like an actual eye. And then using some of these white mask pieces that come on some of the Ninjago ninjas, and I believe a few other different things as well. That's so cool. Just a way of kind of making it look like the eye is just sort of slightly closed there, and also just creating such a realistic eye in general. It's lovely to see all those pieces used in tandem there. It creates a brilliant looking eye design. Something else I love is the use of this specific piece. It comes in a variety of different things. Most notably, it comes in a bunch of the Republic gunship Lego sets. And I love how this has been used here with a bunch of other system pieces, because just sort of partnering them, kind of spamming them and having them sort of slightly curved there, I imagine they're connected with some sort of flex tube of sorts so that it can actually curve in that manner. But seeing it like that and having the sides sort of be covered, it stops looking like it's a sort of cylinder and starts to just kind of blend in with the whole shell, giving it that sort of circular curved look instead. I love how that looks. It's a brilliant example of part spamming to create a sort of specific look that you're after, and also just a brilliant example of taking a piece and sort of building around it of sorts, and then making it seem like it's an entirely different shape in that manner. So yeah, really nice technique and a great way of sort of building that shell out there. It looks awesome. So a fantastic mock. Let's move on to the next one. This is by the _double, and this is Carrax the Strange. So here's what this is inspired by, and you can see the name on the screen. You can pronounce it yourself, because I'm not going to make you cringe and scorn at what I'm saying. But source material is cool, and it's nice to see how it's been translated here. Some notable things that I like. It's great to see some of these, I believe, Azure sort of Technic panel pieces in varying sizes, sort of forming like a sort of spiky back of sorts. And it's nice to see how they sort of change in size. You know, there's the three up the top that are the same size. Then you get a sort of slightly smaller one, and then it actually transitions into a typical Hero Factory armor piece there. And at this specific angle in these images here, those just sort of perfectly look like they're all sort of the same piece, sort of slowly getting smaller there, even though it eventually transitions into an entirely different piece. So it's nice to see some consistency within those pieces, even though they are different in that sense. So love how that looks. I also love the sort of like mandible, kind of claw, hand, limb things at the front here. I just really like how those look. The fact that it's a few different Exoforce robot arm pieces in black there, sort of relatively illegally attached as they're sort of just shoved into one another there. And then having it sort of go off into those sort of like spider leg, larger claw pieces, and then attaching some of those Exoforce kind of claw pieces onto it. Yeah, there's something about that looks a little bit more kind of creepy and unsettling, and I guess with most of these creatures we've seen so far, they look like the sort of monsters that you would see at the bottom of the ocean that are kind of terrifying and kind of creepy. So yeah, I don't know, the fact that there's a lot of sort of like sharper, spikier textures and designs here on the front there's something about it that's a lot more unsettling, which is cool. And you could say the same for the face, the fact that he's got these two like minifigure Paraka spine pieces coming out there. There's something very kind of like lobster-like about that I think is very appropriate and very cool. And also very, creepy, because he's got big old spiky whiskers. It's cool. I love, final thing with this mock, the sort of dark red accent on the torso. Kind of reminds me of like lobsters and different things, because sometimes they have sort of that slight differentiation in color with them. Kind of like the one I'm showing you here, there's a bit of sort of blue on this sort of more red lobster. So I like that sort of hint of an additional color there. It just seems appropriate for sort of underwater creatures. And yeah, I think if that had been like blue or dark blue or black or something, it probably would have still worked. But I don't know, there's something about that little introduction of red that just works very nicely. So pretty cool. On to the next mock now. This is by Novak Mock, and this is Ma the Splendid, which I think is a fantastic title to give a character, the Splendid. I wonder how he earned that name. That's cool. So immediately something that grabbed me about this mock was the really cool squid launcher that he has. I've been on record before saying that one of the worst Bionicle weapon pieces was the squid launcher from the Baraki sets. They didn't always work super great, and some of the other ones were just more superior, in my opinion, although I know other people share that opinion. But it's lovely to see a more just awesome looking version here, using some of these jet engine pieces and then just shoving the squids inside them there. It certainly gives a sense that this is some sort of like squid rocket launcher or something cool. And then the little attachment on the side there, using a sort of like kind of cockpit windscreen piece that comes on some of the Ninjago like spinner pieces from some of the previous ways of Ninjago. I love that. I love how that looks. It's such a unique design for a gun, and a massive improvement on the original version of the squid launcher. So really, really cool. One of my favorite details about this MOC too, although I think I just said that about the gun, so there's a lot of favorite details on this, is on the legs here. They're all primarily black, but then there is the inclusion of dark green towards the bottom there. Now that's just a typical sort of like prefab leg piece there, and then that Knights Kingdom armor piece in black has been placed over the top. And there's something about the two sort of paired like that, and it's only a couple pieces with some axles connecting them. It's a very simple design. But the way they're paired there, the green starts to look almost like fins or some other sort of like feature that you would find on an aquatic fish-like creature. And I love how that looks. There's something that just is so appropriate for a sort of undersea setting just with that design there. I don't know, it just really grabbed me, and I think there's something very unique about it. It's really something special. I like that. I love this face design too. I especially love how the eyes have been connected. You know, the fact that there's those sort of 4 tentacles sort of, going off of the head there. And then towards the top, there's the 2 tentacles that then connect to another smaller tentacle piece. And then there's those translucent clip pieces there. We were talking about those clip pieces before, but these ones are in trans orange there. It's just a really nice way of connecting it. And there's something very nice about this face design here. It's just quite impressive. So, I adore so much about this MOC. It's a very unique one and a very cool one indeed. Oh, and this is the source material for this one. I don't think I showed that before. So, cool to see the comparison between the two. Let's move over to the next one. This here is built by Velociraptor, and this is Peturgator. Yep. So here's the source material for what this is based off of. So nice to compare the two, of course. But something that I think is super interesting with the sort of MOC version here, I really like how he's built this sort of back design and the way the limbs are kind of coming off of it. To me, it almost looks like the limbs would sort of spin like some sort of rotating blade or something. You know, like a Beyblade or a fidget spinner or something, which, maybe that's just my headcanon. Maybe that's not at all how the limbs would work if he were to come to life and fight of sorts. But it kind of looks like that. I think that's a very unique and clever design. So yeah, it's always cool to see more unique body shapes and moving away from a more typical humanoid form, which is always cool. I also enjoy the very subtle hints at the sort of like wires towards the top of some of the limbs there. Those wire pieces, the fact that they're a little bit more flexible, and the fact that they come in a lot more kind of like modern sets and a bit easier to get. They're just such helpful pieces. So I always love seeing little hints of them on MOCs here and there. It's just cool. Something else I enjoy about this is the repeated friction joints on the lower legs here. I always like seeing that. It's a super simple technique. You just get some of those very tiny friction joint pieces and put them together like that. Fun fact, sometimes that can be very difficult to separate. So, make choices and be careful with what you do. If you suddenly decide you don't want that, it might be a little bit difficult to separate them, but it's not impossible. I just like that design. There's something about it that looks a little bit more like... like the carapace on some sort of like crustacean or something like that. So again, it seems fitting for the aesthetic of these MOCs. And I love how it transitions into this sort of more brick-built system foot design here. It's just a good look. It's pretty cool. So love this MOC. On to the second last MOC now. This is by Braylon Turner, and this is Opalabinkalakalurka of the Depths. The photography on this is cool. But let me show you the source material so I don't forget. This is what this is based off of here. And you can certainly see some comparisons there, especially with the sort of like longer trunk and stuff like that. So a very unique design that's been represented in Lego form. But yeah, the photography. I love how this looks. The way that this creature is sort of like... I know he's kind of got those bended knees, the legs are a little bit closer. He looks almost like sort of shy of sorts. And the fact there's kind of like a lot of negative space around the MOC within the photography of it, just like empty space behind it sort of thing. I don't know, there's something about it where I could almost imagine this creature sort of like huddled in the corner somewhere under the water, and you're like, oh, it's just a little innocent creature, and then suddenly it attacks you. It seems shy and it seems frail and nervous, but that's just a tactic to kind of lure you in and then attack you sort of thing. So a very interesting sort of look to the character that then starts to paint a picture of its personality and stuff, which I think is pretty cool. I enjoy the part spamming on the back here. All of these panel pieces in teal form a nice sort of like shell of sorts, which just looks cool. And I love how this eye design looks. All these different pieces here in that big bright red is a nice contrast with the black and the teal there. There's something just very striking about it, and it looks like one of those sorts of things that you see in a lot of like horror games and other things where you're like in a hallway and it's pitch black, but you can just see like eyes at the very end of the hallway, and you're like, oh god, some evil creatures there. The fact that the red pops so much against the teal and the black there, it seems sort of reminiscent of that of sorts. There's a nice kind of horror vibe to this mock. It's very unique and very cool. So lovely work on this one here. Let's move over to the final mock now. This is by my friend Aiden Builds, and this is Nui Cowlick. So here's the source material for this, what this was inspired by. And yeah, for first off, whatever this thing is, it's a shame it's extinct because it looks super cute and pretty cool. But it's lovely to see how this has been translated here, and such a good part use to recreate that head design here using the wing pieces from Big Chill, one of the Ben 10 sets, which I recently talked about in a video if you want to check that out and learn a little bit more about those Ben 10 sets because they were pretty cool. But yeah, just the idea of using those and partnering them with a few other sort of system pieces and things, it just perfectly mimics the sort of shape and form of that head design. It's so cool. It kind of reminds me of almost like a hammerhead shark, just the way that the face sort of looks in that manner. Obviously, it's based off of a previously existing real life thing, but you could very easily adapt these pieces or a sort of similar sort of size and shape to other characters and other animals and things that exist in the real world. So yeah, have a think about it, because I know there's something that I really like about that almost sort of like axe-like head shape there. It's just so unique and so fun. I love the color scheme of this, the beautiful dark blue and then sort of blocking out sort of a lighter blue on the top with these sort of like kind of feather-like pieces of sorts, and then the sort of tan underneath the sort of underbelly there just looks awesome. I love how the tail ends as well, using one of these dragon head pieces that came on some of the old Lego Viking set. This is the set that dark blue one came in specifically, and yeah, it just looks so cool. I don't know, this is probably my favorite in this collab. This one here is just really something special. It's one of Aiden's best builds in my opinion. I love the like little toes on this mock here. There's something about it that looks very similar to like a frog of sorts, just kind of the way that they sort of round off at the end. It just kind of reminds me of that, and I don't know, I really like how that looks. And just in general, the sort of like textures and shaping of this, there's this beautiful sort of smoothness to this, which kind of reminds me of the skin of like a frog, where it's maybe a little bit damp and a little bit more sort of like, I don't know, kind of gross and weird. But you immediately look at it and go, yeah, that's probably a creature that swims around in the water a lot, So yeah, good choice with your textures and your the pieces that you used to reflect that. It's been very well done. So love your work here, Aiden. Those beautiful striking eyes on the mock, they're also fantastic as well. So a lot to love about this, and a lot that I could talk about with this mock, but I think it's time to end the episode, guys. So hey, if you enjoyed this one here, be sure to check the links in the description below and check out some of the other mocks that these builders have made, because hey, if you liked what you saw here, you might like some of the other stuff that they've made as well. In the description below are also links to my own social media, so if you want to check out some of the other stuff that I've got going on, that's the way to do so. There's also my Patreon, so if you're interested in joining my Patreon for some fun bonus content like Q&As and podcasts and all sorts of other fun things, or access to my private Discord server, that's an avenue that you can explore if you are so interested. And otherwise, the submission email is on your screen right now, so hey, next episode will in fact be that Fan Submit a Mocks episode. I promise I won't, no, look, if a good collab comes out, I'll give it a miss for a week and I'll cover it next week, but for now, we'll do a Fan Submit a Mocks episode next week. So hey, you still got time to submit if you've forgotten or you haven't got around to it yet, so don't you worry. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now.